Good evening. My name is Emily and I have a Etsy store called Yesterday's Stash. And tonight I would like to show you my latest journal that I've put together. This is called Fleurs for you French speaking people. I'm not, but fleurs meaning flowers. This is a very flower filled, packed with different abundance of florals. So I just thought that I would first start by showing you what the outside looks like. It's 9 by 7 and it has 4 signatures. It's 2 1/4 inches. Spine is 2 1/4 inches, and there are 50 removable tags and about 30 some laces or trims. I have an abundance of trims and laces, and most of my books will have laces in them. I also have an abundance of old magazines and old newspaper articles. A lot of this came from the old home place, and I've been holding on to it for nearly 30 years. And so I need to, you know how you get to the point where the drawers are just too full and it's time to destash. So that's why I have a store, Yesterday's Stash. But before I begin, actually in the book, I wanted to show you 2 things that I used. First was the Tim Holtz Ideology set that's wallflower. And this is actually vellum sheets. And so you'll see some of that throughout the book. But I love this wallpaper pattern. I've already bought 2 of the regular sized 24-pound paper or whatever it is, and then 1 of the vellums, plus I have some 6 by 6 of Tim Holtz. I also wanted to show you this old book that I found. It's an old ledger, and it actually has screws in here, but I pulled the screws out. It's really a neat looking, thick, heavy. Somebody was really going to be serious about doing some bookkeeping in here. But most of the pages look like this. They are, was used by a bookkeeper or someone who was debits, credits, balance, and, all of that. So many of the pages that I'm using come from this, the pages that I'm using for journaling come from this book. So I wanted to pull that aside, and then we'll pull out the book and start looking at it. The book sheds. The book is so old, it's got a lot of pieces of it that are shedding. So we're going to start here. Want to say that this book is 60 pages, and then times 2 is 120. And I have put some charms in it, and lots of cutouts and pockets, mini collages on pages. And so let's just take a look. This is actually, I have a store that I go to that sells all kinds of paper, well, any kind of supply you would want. It even sells plumbing equipment. But one of the things that I found not too long ago was just a whole pile of these little, I guess you could say they're gift tags. So I've included some of those. And then this is, I found here, it's We Are Shaped and Fashioned by What We Love, from the library of. So you can put this anywhere you want, but I put it in here for a person to use. This is what the inside cover looks like. And I put a gold trim. And there's lots of sewing in the book. And used a Tim Holtz clasp to keep the hairband on. And this is another interesting thing that I found. It is a group, it was a stack about 2 inches high of old pages from an old Peterson magazine. And this says 1868 Peterson magazine. So I live in an area where there's lots of libraries. So I'm assuming that someone was tearing out the etched pictures from the magazines and saving them. This is, of course, maybe even fashion. But you know, even in 1868, they did have this type of color. This says August 1862 right here. But anyway, this is the original copy of the paper. I actually, the pages were so thin that I actually had I stitched the better 2 sides together. There's you know, the other side, but in order to protect the pages, I ended up stitching 2 of them together. And I used a lot of, I guess you could sort of call this franken pages, where I took, and I love texture. I love to have layers. So a typical page in this book would look like lace on here, a trim off of here, lace along the pocket, sewing, zigzag, and then 2 pieces of paper, this being the main pattern. It's a Victorian pattern from an old, well, I don't know how old it was, but from a dress book that I found at the thrift store. And the paper was just so pretty that I couldn't think of a way to use it, and only about this much. The rest of it is where you put your names and addresses. So I couldn't get a whole page of this. So that's why I just took and used half of the pages for it. I'm going to put this in here before we move on. And this is an example again of, this is actually some from Theodosia Square. It's a paper line where you know, lace on this side, lace in the middle, kind of franken together. But the only part that's showing from that address book is the butterflies. This is actually an envelope. Let's see, Patricia Viramontes taught us all how to do those. And these are some of these library cards, from the, not Library of Congress, but from the Dewey Decimal Library of Congress, maybe, yeah, the Library of Congress. And this just is an example of how you can take and do some collaging on one side of it. So I always like to put I don't know if you can see it on this, but I really like to put a glitter or a glaze on the outside. I think that it adds, this is an old dictionary page. This is a dictionary from 1937. It belonged to my great aunt, who was named Emily as well. And so what I usually use to put some sort of a finish is this acrylic glitter glaze. Or I will put a sealant. This is a Krylon clear sealer. And I will usually spray that just to protect pages from getting damaged and to increase the longevity of the life of the... I'm also a cat lover, so every book will have at least one picture of a cat. Here's an example of a collage on the page, and then a bronze paper clip and a little dangle. This came from a book of wildflowers book, and I took them and turned them into little tags. And I forget what I've put on this, but it does have some sort of finish on it. Not quite sure what type But this sage green here is my favorite color, and I try to use that as much as I can. Washi tape. This is just some of the motifs from the address book. This is that vellum. This is some of the collaging on the pages. Journaling pages. These are actually Tim Holtz paper wildflower, and I just did some sewing around them and put a little button on them to give them a little bit of charm, and I put a glitter on this as well. More collaging. This is a fairy from, well, I know that Cicely Barker does a whole lot of fairies. I'm not sure if this particular one is from her or not. Two more collage pages. Well, this is a collage page of collages. This is a handmade tag. More collaging. And then because I have so many old magazines that have magazine articles in them, I actually haven't put them in an envelope that I did had some fun with stamping and painting. And this is an article out of Cosmopolitan magazine from 1893, and this is just pictures in the it's whatever the article, purses, pockets, and personal receptacles is what it's about. But you can do whatever you want with this. You can actually turn it into one of Patricia Verimonte's designs, or you can cut out the pictures and use them in some way. And again, this is some of the collaging and sticking the papers together and having fun at the sewing machine. This is just some tags. This is from an old calendar, and this is from an old magazine. Painting by kind permission of Grasaric Gallery, wherever that is. So, and here's two more charms. Here's my other cat lover, and this is purchased a stack of different old or vintage. This is registers, and it would be the same thing. It has, lists the different amounts of funding and who's paid and the way it was done before we had the computer and Excel. And I don't know if you've ever heard of smash books, but these are what we call smash pages. I've picked these up, the little smash book pages. I've picked them up at Tuesday morning, and it's just lists. Don't forget to bring. I overheard. If I could, go anywhere, live anywhere. So that's lists, which is part of what our books are for, is, to keep as a keepsake and to keep things in. This is from a Godeys, Godeys or Godeys, I'm not quite sure. It's a book of fashion from the 1800s. These are pictures that I cut out of. This is actually, and I put it on a thicker cardstock, and it says the duet circa 1857, so it just is a picture, an older picture. Another collage, key collage, more collaging, flowers. I'm an Anglophile. I love London, and I love anything British. So I've been collecting English and British and stories and articles and actually castles of English in English. This is a castle of, it's called Grimsthorpe, and it says home to the Aresby family since 1516. And where is it? It's in Lincolnshire in England. And then here's a bookmark. I tend to be, I used to work at Barnes & Noble, so I'm kind of a book lover and love to read. This is a bookmark that has been turned into a tag. Another picture from that, Godey's. This is when crinolines first came out in 1864. Hearts on a string. A little cutout from the old dictionary I mentioned. More tags. I enjoy designing and making the tags myself, although I also like sticking ones that are bought from the store in as well. Moving right along, more collaging on all of these pages and more of the hemp, the vellum books. This is where I got really crazy and started making collaging on pieces of cardstock that I actually put a backing on. I did trimming. This came from Tsunami Rose. This also came from her mystery boxes. This came from her photography, and then this is her words. And I just got, had a great time putting it on a piece of paper and then adding different layers. That's just one of my favorite parts of doing these kinds of journals, is what you get to do. This is kind of a take and go book. It's some of that newsprint paper that was used by kindergarten children to learn to write. It may still be used, actually. And this is where I took and put a set of envelopes together, and it's got little pockets. This is more hearts on a string, and it's a whole set that just worked into making it into a little pocket set, and it was just so much fun to make, just so much fun. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with what we call piano roll paper, but that's what these two are, is this piano roll paper. I turned them into a little pocket. And this is actually done on a little, like a little ATC card. And I cut the piano roll paper up and made envelopes out of them. This piano roll paper, this particular one is Bye Bye Blackbird, but the way it comes is it's all these perforations in the paper. The paper is just a wonderful texture and really, really great to work with. So piano roll paper has come in very handy for making envelopes and things of that nature. Try to include a 4-leaf clover in every book. And then I have these, what we call book pages. And these book pages are where people that belong to book clubs can, or if you don't belong to a book club or you just want to keep a list of the books that you have read. And this is, kind of a log of keepsake of the books I've read and why was I interested in it, who was the author, who were my favorite characters, and so forth and so on. So you can get those kinds of things from books like these that I have bought at discount stores. This is a books I've read. This is what I took and used for that. And it actually comes from a company called journalsunlimited.com, and I paid 50 cents for this at the bookstore. This is a reader's journal, just to get an idea that what I do here, this is a Barnes & Noble product, is an example of how you can keep a list of the titles and keep a list of the books that you have read. It's a reader's journal. Also, if you're in a book club, here's a an organizer, and all of these I found at discount stores. And the reason I got this one is because it has a list of all of, you know, the Pulitzer Prize books and what years they were won, and the Nobel Prize winner, the Man Booker Prize, the Penn Faulkner Award for fiction, and National Book Award. So I like to, you know, I just wanted to have a copy of that, but you can also take and use the pages out of this for, of course, the book is half torn apart. It's called the Book Club Organizer, and it's by Chronicle Books. So these are buttons on a string here. I used a brownish sort of a cardstock. Well, it's actually like about 24 pound, I suppose, to you know, craft paper style for the journaling pages. I had a great time making these. I just took a piece of paper from a scrapbook, put a backing on it, and then did some collaging on the outside. There's another charm. This is another one of those that I made, but I put a pocket in it and stuck, so that can be taken out. All of these can be taken out and reused for something else. You can remove all of the charms and use them for something else. This is some really pretty, shiny paper from a paper pack called Vintage Treasures. I collect postcards, so I put some postcards in here. And at the end of each book, there's always something, there's always a stash of things that I wish that I had, or that I wish that I had been able to put in the book. And so I actually make those raggeties that Nick the Booksmith talks about. This is a piece of stationery with an envelope that can be used by the purchaser. And then another castle. This is called Nottingham Castle, and it is in, this does not tell me, but this is associated with, this particular castle is associated with Robin Hood. So that's how I came across that. And this is just a little card. So there will be a raggedy included with this book of extra things. Like I say, you can see that the theme was flowers, and using particular patterns of flowers in different pages. So thank you for watching. Thanks for coming to my channel, Yesterday's Stash. This book, Fleurs, will be for sale in my Etsy store, and I appreciate your taking the time to visit with me, and I look forward to visiting again.